This is the first in a series of sermons that I'm going to be doing this fall on being a good ally. I felt called to focus on allyship at this time, especially because of the many times during the past year that we've been called upon as Unitarian Universalists to be supportive of marginalized groups. And as I've read and learned, made mistakes, and attempted to ameliorate problem areas in my own allyship, I realize the need for us all to do some thinking and preparing as we undertake this very important work. But first, let me pat our congregations on the back for some of the things we've been doing this past year. We allied with immigrants in Bullock County after some ICE raids. On a Tuesday morning in early December, I got a phone call asking me if I would come down and help some of the folks that were at the Bullock County Jail trying to find out information about their loved ones that had been picked up and taken from them. I went down there. I found that there were about 5 women and some children standing at the window trying to get information and basically being treated very, very rudely by ICE officials behind the window, telling them there was nothing they could do, they just needed to go home, etc. I tried to speak to the ICE official and was basically treated rudely myself. The women and children went down and sat on a bench with their head down. I went to the other window where I could find maybe get somebody to get the sheriff, and shared with them that I wanted to see the sheriff. They said he was in a meeting, and I said, well, will you please go and let him know that Reverend Jane Page is here and she really needs to see him. So in a very short time, he came out. I have to say that, give him credit for that. He came out and he said, I'll meet with you over here in this other room. We started over there and I motioned for them to come. He said, oh, I'm meeting with her now. I said, no, they're with me. And he said, oh, and he said, well, we'll meet in this bigger room. And we went into a room, and he did get the ICE agents to come in and explain more, answer our questions while he was there. And he himself tried to do what he could to answer our questions. We were not able to get them out. He did not release them, even though they had not been arrested and booked. They were just holding them there. He did tell us that he didn't even know they were doing this, and they just brought them there. But nevertheless, they did treat us a little more politely. Then we were able in the church to use our facilities to have a community meeting and figure out how we could raise funds to help these families. We were able to raise those funds, use our Helping Hands group, and we were able, through that, with the help of the leadership of the Latinx community, through them figuring out how to divide these funds up to support these families as they went through this transition time of either waiting for their loved ones to be released, hopefully, or for some of them, they were deported back to Mexico, and many of them followed them. But we were able to give some additional financial support to those families in that time of need. And we were not the only ones going into the jails. Here in Glenn County, many of our members were visiting this complex where they were going to act as observers of the bail and the courts as they were setting the bails. We have a very difficult situation in Glenn County where folks that cannot afford it and have done very little have high bails that they can't meet. We had a group meeting in our congregation to try to address this needs and others with law enforcement. That was kind of put on hold with COVID, but others continue to explore actions via other avenues and try to work in trying to support these groups of poor folks who really are put in a bad situation through no fault of their own and are not able to pay those high bails that are put forth. Also, we organized to make sure that a group of well-off senior citizens in Bullock County were not able to pressure the Bullock County School Board to exempt them from paying school taxes simply because of their age. And we were able to organize and show up and provide evidence to support the system. And indeed, those folks were not able to push for what they wanted, which was just an exemption, just based on age, not based on income or anything, that just because you've reached a certain age that you should no longer have to support the schools. We were able to do that and meet that need. And we stepped up this summer, even in the midst of COVID, to make sure that the organizers of Black Lives Matter rallies knew that we were there in support. This was especially important in Brunswick after the shooting of Brunswick native Ahmaud Arbery, but also in Statesboro as well after Breonna Taylor and George Floyd were killed. Our folks were there speaking, our folks were there listening, our folks were there in support and behind the leadership of the Black Lives Matter folks as allies. And our members in both churches stepped up to make masks as we allied with those concerned for the health of our citizens. And in Bullitt County, Sherry Barr and others were active in promoting the Squashing the Spread campaign. There she is with the Georgia Southern Eagle, squashing the spread. We also have been active in Glenn County and Brunswick in the call to support the renovation of the Brunswick African American Cultural Center with our donations and with the very hard work of cleaning off the property, thanks especially to Greg Brock. And we also shared in the funding of this marvelous mural painting on the side of the center of Ahmaud Arbery, and thanks to Dana Roberts for helping us to get involved with that and do that. And as schools have started, we've helped to organize parents, teachers, and staff on Facebook to keep the schools safe. These are just some of the activities we've been involved with as allies. There are more that you could name, and I invite you to lift those up in the chat box during our time of joys and concerns. But the point is, we are doing this work, but we could do more and we could do better. I've pulled from my readings and books and the internet to share with you a little of what it means to be an ally. First, to be an ally is to take on the struggle as your own. Take it on as your own. I love this picture. You don't have to be a woman to fight for women's rights. You don't have to be Black to proudly proclaim that Black lives matter. You don't have to be poor to fight for a living wage or for all, or health care for all. We are all part of humanity, and we rise or fall together. And in fact, very often the struggle is our problem. White supremacy is not a problem for people of color to fix. It's a problem white folks need to fix. To be an ally is to transfer the benefits of your privilege to those who lack it. I found this picture to illustrate this point, and it's a good one. You'll recognize this perhaps as the Wall of Moms. This is the Wall of Moms standing in front to protect the protesters at Black Lives Matter. These moms know they have privilege and are less likely to be shot. So they hook their arms together and they put their bodies in front. Years ago, when we had a march in Statesboro, it was the first time I noticed they asked the ministers to march up front. And I complied and went to the front thinking this was another way that the Black community had of honoring their ministers. I knew we went first in the buffet line, things like that. And I thought, oh, this is just a way of honoring the ministers. But I found out very quickly, because it wasn't long before I realized there was a bigger purpose. Since I was one as a minister that was confronted by the police because I was up front. I realized then that my ministerial privilege, and of course, for me, my white privilege, helped us to move around the police that were blocking us and continue our march. You have to be careful with this idea, though, of transferring your benefits of privilege to those who lack it. We need to listen to the leadership of the marginalized groups to see when they need for us to use our voices and our privilege. And when possible, we need to be able to give up our privilege and transfer it to others. To be an ally is to amplify the voices of the oppressed before your own. And I chose this picture, of course, because it so obviously symbolizes this point. When I spoke at 2 of the rallies this summer, I was careful to note that I was invited to speak as an ally by the Black Lives Matter leaders and to lift up their courage and ideas and emphasize that I was following their leadership. I know that I am as guilty as others sometimes for being in front when I sometimes need to fall into the rear. When we are passionate about something, we sometimes have to restrain ourselves sometimes. Dr. Alvin Jackson, who gives leadership to the Willow Hill Renaissance Center, asked me about speaking to the Bullock County Commissioners at our recent attempt to have a contextual marker put up next to the Confederate soldier. I told him that I preferred to just walk up and stand behind him as an ally as he spoke. It wouldn't have mattered anyway because they'd already made up their minds to vote against it. But I felt that folks needed to see the symbolism of this act, and we all need to continue to work on this. To be an ally is to acknowledge that even though you feel the pain or feel some pain, this conversation is not about you. Yes, we often do feel pain in our work as allies, and sometimes tears inadvertently do flow. But we should be quick to divert attention away from our pain to the very real pain of the oppressed and the marginalized. It's not about us. To be an ally is to stand up even when you feel scared. Really, all you have to do is think of folks like John Lewis or Harvey Milk and realize there are folks who face far greater fears than we do. And this doesn't mean you shouldn't be aware of danger and avoid it when it is great, especially when your life could be in danger. But sometimes all we're fearing is someone unfriending us on Facebook or something like that. We all need to do like the lion in The Wizard of Oz and realize that we already have that courage within us. We just need to bring it forth. To be an ally is to own your mistakes. Own your mistakes. To do this work, I can share with you for sure, is to mess up in doing it. You're going to mess up. Try not to, but you will. You're going to make mistakes. So you need to practice now saying, my bad, I'm sorry I messed up. I apologize, I'll work on that. To be an ally is to understand that your education is up to you and no one else. For much too long, we have felt that we needed to call on people in marginalized groups to teach us. But guess what? They and others have written lots of books and articles and made videos for us to watch. We need to educate ourselves. And if we need some group guidance, we can form a group. We are not alone in this struggle to be a good ally, but we don't need to burden those who are fighting these battles daily in our efforts to do better. And when we do call on them for their expertise, we need to pay them. So I'm going to share with you some of the do's and don'ts that I found shared by others on a crowdsourced site called Guide to Allyship. I'll just go through these quickly. The do's, first of all. These highlight some of the things I just shared, but these are the do's. Do be open to listening. Do be aware of your implicit biases. We all have them. And if you think you don't, go to that Harvard implicit bias test and take some of those. We all have them. Do your research to learn more about the history of the struggle in which you are participating. It helps to know your history. Greg and I have been reading and listening to history books all summer. We're listening now to a biography of Frederick Douglass that has shown some light on some things. And you got to know your history around these things. Do the inner work to figure out a way to acknowledge how to participate in oppressive systems. I'm looking to see if I see my book. Here it is. I tried to get you all, and some of you have, to get this book called Me and White Supremacy. We'll be talking about that the next time I preach, but it's really good about doing the inner work, journaling some, looking at some of these things as you try to work forth to acknowledge how you participate in oppressive systems. And do's continue. Then do the outer work and figure out how to change the oppressive systems. And I think one way that's the best way that we're going to have to do that is to vote. Sometimes we're not going to be able to make some changes like we were trying to do with the contextual marketers. Some people are voted out of office. We got to make sure we vote and get others to the polls, or get others ways to vote that they can vote safely. Do use your privilege to amplify digitally and in person historically suppressed voices. Share those when they're lifted up, these historically suppressed voices. Amplify those. Let folks know. And this not only is in the time where we're looking at things like race and ethnicity, but in looking at one of my friends has been working hard to get health care for those who are bedridden and are not able to go out to the doctor. And I've been trying to lift that up when she would share things. I would share it forward. And indeed, they've made great progress on that. Use your privilege to digitally and in person amplify those voices. Do learn how to listen and accept criticism with grace, even if it's uncomfortable. Yeah, it hurts. It stings when you find out you kind of messed up, or somebody is saying you didn't do it just the right way. But listen and accept the criticism. Do the work every day to learn how to be a better ally. You can't just go to a workshop or listen to this sermon and say, okay, I got it now. Every day, do that work. And then here are the don'ts. Do not expect to be taught or shown. Take it upon yourself to use the tools around you to learn and answer your questions. Do not participate for the gold medal in the oppression Olympics. You don't need to compare how your struggle is just as bad as a marginalized person. They're sharing something that's hurtful to you. Well, let me tell you what happened to me, kind of like we do about our operations or medical things. Share. No, listen. It's not a contest. Do not behave as though you know best. Do not take credit for the labor of those who are marginalized and did the work before you stepped into the picture. Do not assume that every member of an uninvested community feels oppressed. So here's a metaphor that's helped me to think about how folks are feeling about some of these things. This is called boots and sandals, and I have to give credit to Presley Pizzo for this. Imagine your privilege, the privilege that you have, and we have various different kinds of privileges, is a heavy boot that keeps you from feeling when you're stepping on someone's feet or they're stepping on yours. You got those heavy boots on, that's your privilege. While oppressed people have only sandals on. If someone says, ouch, how do you react? Because we can think more clearly about stepping on someone's literal toes than we do when it comes to oppression, the problems with many common responses are obvious. Now look at these and you can see how silly some of these sound, but this is what we're saying about other kinds of oppression when toes get stepped on metaphorically. Here's what we do. Centering yourself, saying something like, I can't believe you think I'm a toe stepper. I'm a good person. Denial that others' experiences are different from your own. I don't mind when people step on my toes. Derailing. Some people don't even have toes. Why aren't we talking about them instead? Refusal to center the impacted. All toes matter. Tone policing. I'd remove my foot if you'd ask me more nicely. Denial that the problem is fixable. Toes getting stepped on is a fact of life. You'll be better off when you accept that. Victim blaming. You shouldn't have been walking around people with boots. And withdrawing. I thought you wanted my help, but I guess not. I'll just go home. Now, these sound silly when we think about in terms of toe stepping, but these are the kinds of things the marginalized and oppressed hear from the privileged when they say ouch about something. I don't normally put anything on my messages to you all from corporations to show as good examples, but I'm going to show you a video today that's put out by Netflix for their employees and others to amplify the importance of allyship in their workplace. And I think they've done a pretty good job of it. Here it is.
Hello, What's going down?
Oi.
Hi.
Marhaba, أنا نو.
Konnichiwa.
Vamos a hablar.
This is about you.
This is about us.
I'm a father of 4 amazing kids.
A dancer, but only in my bedroom.
A believer in the power of stories.
Soy bilingüe, casi trilingüe.
An engineer, a nerd.
Sou lésbica, eu sou amiga.
Japanese, Korean.
Palestinian, a German national.
An immigrant, East Asian American woman of color.
And a Zamiltak.
あなたも私の同僚です。
We make amazing things together.
We aspire to bring joy
To the entire world.
But
You and I inhabit different worlds.
You and I have access to different spaces.
unless you've experienced it, you can never fully understand what it's like to be stuck between two cultures.
To pretend to be someone else in order to be safe.
To grow up in South America in Spanish, and at 19 having to relocate to the US and live in English.
To be a Black gay man from the rural South.
And be the only one in the room.
Unless you've experienced it yourself, you can never really know what it's like.
To have to listen to someone be degrading to your race and be the only person of that race in the room.
To lose friends, family, coworkers, simply because you wanted to be who you are.
To not know whether you can call the country that you love home.
To be the father of a trans daughter.
I think we all have a responsibility to make the world that we live in a little bit better. And you kind of have to start where you are.
What allyship is listening, compassion.
To immerse yourself in content, in experiences and stories from groups that aren't of your own.
Anybody who sees something that isn't quite right can become an ally and help their colleagues.
When you've been through a struggle that hurt you for such a long time, I think you have this endless energy to give to others.
Anyone can be an ally, and everyone can use an ally, and you can use your privilege in the moment to extend that privilege to someone else.
I think this is what makes us human, to help others and to be empathetic.
We're all learning.
We're all learning.
E tá todo mundo aprendendo.
Mabad.
Together?
Juntos.
It is one company.
We can all be allies.
We can all be allies.
Yes, we can all be allies because we all have a heart to cultivate the empathy for the oppressed, ears to listen to the experiences of people of color and others, eyes to identify privilege, a nose to sniff out implicit bias, a mouth to speak out against injustice, hands to take action and make change. We can all be allies. So just remember, winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you have to do is call and we'll be there. Yes, we will. You've got some friends. Amen. Blessed be.